When Sergeant Mark Horsley posed as a vulnerable person in a wheelchair, he hoped to catch a violent thief and begin to put an end to crime on the streets. But instead, the seasoned Vancouver police officer discovered something shocking. Over the past 2 years, the city of Vancouver had experienced a spate of despicable and violent attacks against some of the city's most vulnerable, people in wheelchairs. In an 18-month span, there were 28 violent robberies against people in wheelchairs, including knife-point muggings and assaults with baseball bats. Although the attacks occurred throughout the city, 60% took place in Vancouver's downtown east side, a poor neighborhood that had become notorious for its high crime rate in recent times. The police couldn't cope and they didn't know what to do to eradicate violence in the streets, until the protagonist of our story, Sergeant Mark Horsley, had a brilliant idea that would end up opening everyone's eyes and decrease the number of assaults in the city. Although he himself didn't expect to achieve it the way he did, and both he and the entire police force were amazed with everything they found out through his plan. But before we get into the details and get to the heart of the action, we'll give you some context to get to know Mr. Horsley and his magnificent career as a police officer in Vancouver, his hometown and the place where he's been serving his country as a sergeant for more than 40 years. Because without knowing his story, it would be impossible for you to understand what he accomplishes next and how he does it. Born and raised in Vancouver, Mark Horsley had everything a cop needed to succeed: instinct, intelligence, strength, humility, leadership skills, and the city's police department knew it. From the first day he joined the department, Horsley became essential to his colleagues and bosses. His dedication in every service, but above all his great companionship and warmth, made him someone you couldn't help but want to be around. Everyone loved and admired him in equal parts, which propelled his career and helped him become the youngest police sergeant in Vancouver department at the age of 28. Personally, Mark's story is less impressive but no less interesting. He grew up in a small immigrant family. His mother was African American and his father, who was born in the US, was the son of an Italian couple who immigrated to the country during the 1940s to find work. His parents were the owners of a small printing press in a modest Vancouver neighborhood, never rich by any stretch of the imagination, but they had everything they needed to live and ensure their only child grew up healthy and happy. It was thanks to his family that Horsley learned the true meaning of humility and hard work. They taught him that when someone wanted something in life, he shouldn't sit back and wait for the results to come, but should work tirelessly until he got it. His parents showed him that dreams do come true, but only if we're willing to do whatever it takes, without complaining and excuses. The teachings of his family were crucial in the sergeant's childhood and adolescence, turning him into a brilliant young man who managed to excel in all aspects of his life. Horsley would have been anything he set his mind to in life, yet he was always clear about what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a policeman and take care of others every day of his life. "I want to be a policeman, Mom. I know you'd have liked me to be a lawyer or doctor or to study any other career where I could have a better salary, but this is my dream. Being a policeman's what I want most," he told his mother a few days before finishing high school and having to decide what his future would be. "Honey, you could never let us down. It doesn't matter what you want to be as long as it's what you decide. Don't be influenced by other people's expectations. Money's not the most important thing in this life, Mark. Your father and I have proven that to you all these years by working Monday through Saturday to earn a pretty decent salary and not needing anything else to be happy. We had you, a house to live in, and air in our lungs. What more could anyone need? Being a good person seems to me the greatest reward you can give to others. Focus on that and I assure you that you'll become the best cop ever seen," his mother said tenderly to reassure him. And just as his mother predicted, Mark not only managed to graduate at the top of his class at the Vancouver Police Academy, he also managed to become the best officer on the force in record time. A success that brings us to the present day when Mark had to deal with one of the worst crime waves since he graduated as a police officer. His city was in dire straits, especially the most vulnerable who couldn't defend themselves and lived totally exposed to the evil that lurked every day on the streets. If we do not intervene and make it clear who's in charge in the city we love so much will cease to be a safe place even for us. And the thieves will not be afraid to act at any time of day because they will have the certainty that nothing will happen to them. We must act, and soon," said Marvin Scott, the captain of the crime-fighting unit in which Horsley also served. Scott is right, but I believe that to get results we have to do something they don't expect. The thieves now are not like they used to be. They've evolved, they know how we operate, and know our protocols by heart. The best way to give them a warnings from the inside without them realizing that we're there, proposed Mark to his team, thinking of a way to carry out his ideas. Everyone nodded, but no one was able to come up with a plan that met the requirements of what the sergeant had just said. That day, no one came to any conclusions, so they decided to go to rest to see if the next day someone was able to come up with a viable plan that they could carry out immediately. Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story. That same night, after spending hours thinking about a solution to the case, Horsley came up with the idea of carrying out an undercover mission. The plan was that he would pose as a wheelchair-bound person with a severe brain injury who lived alone in the neighborhood. In addition, Mark would also be loaded with bait, which was what the police called loose change that could lure a robber into targeting him. This would increase their chances of hitting the mugging ring and eradicating attacks on people in wheelchairs in the downtown east side, the neighborhood most affected by attacks in the last year. "Are you sure about what you're doing, Mark? You could get hurt and it would be very difficult for us to intervene in time," the squad captain told him when Horsley proposed a plan to them the next morning. Everyone agreed with the plan, but they knew it involved a lot of risk and worried about him. "Trust me, I know what I'm doing. If it goes wrong, I'll take full responsibility, but I'm sure that the mission will give us these answers we're looking for. These people need us urgently and we will not fail them," Horsley said decisively to his team. And the truth is that Mark was right. The mission would be long and complicated, but it would give them the solution they were looking for, although he would do it in a very different way than they all imagined. A week later, Horsley began the mission and posed as a terminally ill man in a wheelchair called Carl. While undercover, he wore a small camera hidden in his clothing that would record everything that happened around him and a microphone that kept him in communication with his team. It was the only condition his team placed on him to allow him to carry out the plan and infiltrate the neighborhood, as it was too risky to do so blindly. The sergeant spent a lot of time in the downtown east side, more than he expected, hoping to catch one of the assailants. But to his surprise and that of his entire team, he never did. He didn't apprehend a single robber during his mission, but he discovered something much more important that would give him the key to know how to do it later. While he was undercover in the poorest areas, Horsley was overwhelmed by the compassion and kindness of the people of the neighborhood. No one looked at him with distrust nor wanted to harm him. On the contrary, they quickly welcomed him as one of their own and tried to make his life as easy as possible. It was an attitude totally contrary to what he'd imagined and had nothing to do with the rumors he'd heard about the neighborhood. Luckily, Mark carried his camera with him at all times and was able to record the whole truth about what was going on in the streets of that simple neighborhood. After returning home from the first mission, he and his team decided to go public with what Horsley was able to record and did so via the official Vancouver Police YouTube account. The video quickly went viral, racking up more than 600,000 views and thousands of comments within a week. Through it, Horsley showed the whole truth about one of the city's most notorious neighborhoods, showing how people went out of their way to help him, not hurt him. The uptake was so quick that it blew me away. I'm an experienced undercover operator. I've been working on similar missions for many years, and I've never been accepted into a role so quickly. It was really exciting, Horsley commented to the local news channel that interviewed him following the success of the YouTube video. Horsley also explained that the Vancouver PD released the footage as a strategy to prevent future crime. Their action strategy was based on awareness, hoping that seeing the overwhelming level of support their undercover officer received from the community, people would think twice before victimizing the most vulnerable, and they succeeded. In the video, footage showed Sergeant Horsley pretending he couldn't count, couldn't read, and asking others to buy things from the store with his money or to give him change, and how every time he needed it, people would give him back the correct change or even some more than they owed him. It was really touching. We had people who needed money, people who were sick with drug addiction, people who were desperate, but they didn't stoop so low as to mug me or rob me. And I think that says something about the human condition, he said. I think people are good and they want to be good, explained the sergeant emotionally. Later, the sergeant also confessed that thanks to his mission, the police now have a much more realistic idea of the level of protection in the community and what the real risks are in the area. Through their undercover mission, Horsley and his team now know that robbers will always seek to carry out their attacks on vulnerable people when no one is looking or in very secluded areas. Never in daylight, nor in the more central areas where he'd infiltrated and knew the neighbors were protecting themselves. While the operation did not lead to a direct arrest of any thieves, Horsley said that what he learned during those weeks greatly helped police in Vancouver and elsewhere across the country to know how to deal with such crimes and what steps to take to ensure the safety of the most vulnerable people in a community. I realized that the police are not the only ones who are responsible for protecting vulnerable people. It's a community value. It's the whole community watching out and looking out for each other. All together, we'll succeed in eradicating crime, not by working separately and not communicating with each other. There is strength in numbers. Now I know the people I met on my mission opened my eyes and I carry them in my heart, confessed the sergeant with emotion as he remembered all the people he met in the downtown neighborhood. Today, the rate of muggings and vulnerable people has dropped dramatically, and collaboration between the citizens of Vancouver and its police force have become commonplace. After learning of Sergeant Horsley's story, people in vulnerable neighborhoods felt more united and confident, and knew exactly what to do to prevent criminals from harming their own. Mark Horsley not only saved his city and taught it to be more united, but he learned an important life lesson that he will never forget, and that will make him see the world around him in a completely different way. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.